We're now tuned in to the Last of Its Kind podcast, produced by humans, made for humans.
Yo, check this out. We connect the streets.
Let's do it again!
Yeah, baby!
Mike Johns, Check This Out News, bringing it to you live each and every week. And today we got a special guest with us, State Representative
Giovanni Capriglione.
Gio. But we're going to discuss the topic of, is it possible to regulate artificial intelligence? With AI startups popping up left and right, governance seems easy if it's the likes of Meta, Google, Microsoft. But when you have startups, that's the hard part of governance, right?
Right. You know, when you sit back and you say, okay, there are certain things we're not going to let anybody do. Not if you're a big company, if you're a small company, if you're a citizen. We have laws for a reason. Think about child sexual abuse materials, right? And the ability to generate that using AI and deepfakes, right? Things like, for instance, social scoring, saying people can or can't do certain things because of either things they've said or people they've associated with. So there's certain rules, no matter who you are.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, thanks. Sometimes I wish my name was Mike John too, but no, it's Giovanni Capriglione from the great state of Texas.
The very best the great state of Texas has to offer.
Thanks for having me on today.
Hey there, cowboy.
Thank you so much. And I want to dive in because AI is obviously a buzz. It's been buzzing in the news last year, this year. Most recently, I like the fact that Microsoft just put out a report. In this report last year, it was, what is the state of AI? This year, they responded, AI is here for good.
Church.
Yes.
So with that in mind, and you know, there's been a lot of debate on AI. There needs to be some sort of governance. I want to ask you, why has Texas become kind of one of the first states that really got involved to say that we need to have an advisory council? And that's one of the things that I thought really stood out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, for me, we all have a little bit of our own expertise in the Texas legislature. There's 150 of us. I happen to have a tech background. I went to Santa Clara University. I used to work in Silicon Valley. So I used to work a lot with computers and programming and that sort of stuff. So I've been involved with cybersecurity. I've been involved with digital privacy. Last year, I passed the state's online privacy legislation. And earlier on, before even session started, I knew that we were going to have to start looking at artificial intelligence. I had just been reading about it. ChatGPT, when I first filed the bill, hadn't even really hit the mainstream yet. But, obviously with some of my peers in the engineering world, I've been talking to it a lot. And I absolutely see the power and the potential pitfalls of it. And so I had filed the legislation. I think it actually technically was filed in December of 2022. I passed it in 2023. And we are now had our second or third meeting already.
That is incredible.
I'll also point out that the Speaker of the House has also decided to create a new committee, an actual committee of the House outside of the council. And he made me the chairman of that committee. And it's called Artificial Intelligence and Emerging Technologies Committee. So it goes even further than AI, talking about quantum computing and some of these other topics that there. So, for me, it's great that Texas is here and is leading on it. We're going to see what exactly needs to be done.
You said a lot there. I want to start with, how did you see that, hey, there needs to be a council assembled to really take this on? Like, that's such an insight in itself, right? You have people that are commoneers all across America, from the great state of California all the way to Iowa, right? Who are just commoneers. And I think about the word VR. And with VR, from California, I just thought everybody knew VR was virtual reality. It was when I was in Kansas that I had to spell it out. When I was in Iowa. So to see where you're at, to say, hey, it's not just AI, artificial intelligence, but hey, we actually need to have some sort of governance. Walk me through how you saw, unlike VR, unlike blockchain, unlike mobility or 5G, that you saw, hey, there's something serious about this.
Well, I guess I'll start with, as a child, my favorite books were books like 1984 and Brave New World. So I focused a lot on the dystopian portion
Yeah.
of my
Every
reading.
nerd has to have read that book. I'm with
Right.
you.
But I was also into science and science fiction. So there's a book by Isaac Asimov called I, Robot too. And if
Yes.
you look at I, Robot, and you read all three one after the other, you pretty soon come to the conclusion that there needs to be rules about how this goes forward. So in that book, he talks about the three main rules, which is one, obviously robots shouldn't hurt humans, they shouldn't hurt themselves. I mean, there's a list of on how robots should work in iRobot. And he ended up creating another law. It's called the zeroth law, which says, hey, before all of those laws, you have to make sure that robots don't harm humanity.
Right.
Okay. And that's when you start thinking, okay, can robots hurt humanity? And for the longest time, people think of robots as, things that look like humans that have arms and feet and a head and all that kind of stuff. But in the world that we live in today, there's a lot of things that are happening robotically that don't look like androids at all. They're your cell phone, they're your social media feed, there's the news, there's all of this stuff which is happening automatically through autonomous algorithms or what have you. And as I started to delve into that, into the digital privacy, as I saw that some of these companies were just taking so much of your information, right? Whether you drive a car, how fast you're going, when you press the brake, where you're going, who you're hanging out with, all of your purchasing habits, you have an Apple Watch, how quickly you're breathing and what your heart rate is going. And pretty soon you can see that we're creating a world that could be a little scary, right? That you have a government that has access to that data and might use that access to the data to try and push an agenda, and that's the 1984 side of it. Or it's that this is essentially keeping people entertained, and if you just watch people scrolling all the time or focused on what they're seeing on social media or on their news feeds, that's the Brave New World part of it. And so anyway, all of that mixed in my head, I get elected, and now this is what I want to work on.
Wow, I love it. And with that in mind, so by having an AI advisory council for Texas, right? Do you feel, and I'm big on this, Trump may say, make America great. I'm big on make America smart again.
Sure.
And if we are looking at a smart city leads to a smart state that then leads to a smart nation that
Yep.
allows us to compete with China, Russia, and what have you. So, do you think that we should have every state should actually have a smart should actually have an advisory council so that Texas is not, you might be at the forefront, but should all the other states do the same, follow suit and do the same thing?
Yeah, and I first let me say I 100% agree with what you just said, right? But we need a smart America, right? Or make
Yes.
America smarter again, right? I mean, absolutely. And you've seen this where we have to improve our workforce, improve our economy. We have to make sure that we start at the beginning, right? Make sure that our students are studying science, technology, engineering, and math, and all of that kind of stuff. And so when people say, okay, well, you want to regulate AI with this AI advisory council, regulation is not a bad thing in and of itself if it's done right. Okay. What does regulation mean? We're going to make sure the good actors can do everything that they want to do and need to do and innovate and be constructive, but we need to punish the bad actors, right? And with
Right.
absence regulation, no one's going to trust any of this. Okay. And so what I've seen as we progress towards AI, it isn't just, oh, how much cooler is ChatGPT going to be? Every single company today, every business, at least medium sized, but even schools and all these organizations, you know what they're doing? They're paying attention to their data. They're putting it in the right format. They're looking at how to organize and engineer a product to help make themselves more efficient. And so AI, what it's doing, at least that buzzword, it's improving our business processes, but also pointing to the shortfall that we have in a workforce that needs to get smarter quicker. And so the answer to your question is I think every state should have it, but I also think every large city should too. Okay. If you're like in Texas, the city of Dallas, you should have a council there. How is AI going to affect the services you give as a city or as a large county? So
And
absolutely.
that's a great answer. So let's say that in the perfect world that we can implement this, then how does the city of Dallas and their AI advisory council work with the state of Texas and that
Sure.
advisory council.
Sure.
And then that advisory council working with the government.
Right. And because at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, it all has to kind of work together.
Yeah.
Let me say our advisory council.
And you brought up a very big point where at the end of the day, I think, and not to cut you off, but when you talk about customers, the consumers, or the citizens, right? Because the citizens and their protection, we've seen so many things that have been breached, right? Yeah. And now AI puts that on steroids, so that there has to be this a serious overlap. It's a necessity overlap between local, state, and federal.
100%. And the thing is, somebody has to go first, right? And so the federal government, God bless them, but they're not getting much accomplished, okay, on the congressional level, right?
Right.
And so I think we have an opportunity, or actually a need, to do this on the state level, okay? So step one, it's the right place. So what is our advisory council? It's two of us. I'm a House member. There's a senator who's on the council as well. But we have 4 appointees from the governor. Someone who's an expert in ethics, someone who's an expert in law enforcement, someone who's an expert in kind of the more technical or the academic parts of it. And so together, it's almost like a little bit of an A-team, right? People from different fields who are going to bring their different version of what it should be. Now, just like most other laws, the state should come up with some standards. Okay, this is at a minimum what you have to do, and don't do this no matter what, but you better do this. But what will happen, and what should happen, is each individual community should be able to say, okay, that we're going to do that because that's the state law, but maybe there's something that's a little bit different in Los Angeles than it is from Sacramento. Maybe they have different services, or the community wants something different. And so the right law that's done in the state level will essentially be able to let cities have some sort of additional input that they can provide that are specific to their communities, okay? Mm-hmm. And because from the state level, there's no way I could come up with every single rule. It's kind of like, think about planning and zoning. We say that there's a law, everyone should be able to buy a house. That's the state law. But how is that house built? We let the cities and the counties go and get into some of the details on how many square feet it can be and how many floors it can be. And so I do see that. But I think ultimately the value of AI is just what you said, letting people focus not just on AI, but on protecting people's data, protecting people's privacy, getting information and minimizing the data. So only collecting that what you need. How many times have you called the government and they're like, give us your social security number? Why? There's like, stop it. Don't get it. Right. So this whole change is a change in focus. It's kind of like, I think the whole world is doing a change management program right now.
Let me ask you this. With AI startups popping up left and right, governance seems easy if it's the likes of Meta, Google, Microsoft. But when you have startups, how is it, and I've talked to people, like that's the hard part of governance, right?
Right. Well, I think, and this is something that we're going to talk about at length, but when you sit back and you say, okay, there are certain things we're not going to let anybody do. Right? Not if you're a big company, if you're a small company, if you're a citizen. We have laws for a reason, right? Like think about child sexual abuse materials, right? And the ability to generate that using AI and deepfakes, right? Things like, for instance, social scoring, right? Saying people can or can't do certain things because of either things they've said or people they've associated with. So there are certain rules, no matter who you are, we're just not going to allow here in the US. It's a question of liberty and all of that. But some things we should say, okay, big companies, you are going to have to do auditing and transparency and do all of the assessments. But for small companies, we don't want to restrict their ability to be innovative or try out new things. You're not really selling it to a lot of customers yet. So what we have is this concept called a sandbox, that in this little sandbox, if you qualify to be in the sandbox, go crazy, right? Obviously, you can't do some things, but you have a lot more flexibility inside there. When you're too big for the sandbox, well, now more rules apply to you. So that's how we're thinking of doing this.
I like that. And with that in mind, what are some of the potential risks that we see of AI? Like, we can talk about Terminator, but I really just give not a sci-fi, but like, hey, these are things that are very pressing that we should consider. And I love that from a government level.
Right. I mean, so I'll just say and I was just quoted in the newspaper about this, but basically we're having right now elections here in the state of Texas, right? And it's the last 2 weeks of an election. That's when it's really hard to combat misinformation and disinformation, right? So we already have a race here in Texas where someone took someone's photo and manipulated it, made them look like, so this guy's a Republican, made him look like he was leading a Democrat rally, right? The ability to go and change people's voices. We heard just recently where someone had kind of manipulated a voice of President Biden and tried to go and do voter suppression on top of it. In my hearing, we have a company, happens to be a California company, Civ AI.
Oh boy!
And have you met with them?
Oh,
Okay, but they did a demo of a deepfake against me. So I live in a little town called Southlake, okay, and all they do is they point at me and immediately generates the local newspaper's heading and font, goes and knows what the picture of my local city hall is, puts that out there, and says, hey, the elections are going to be pushed till tomorrow. There's an active shooter alert going on right now in the area. Puts in a quote from me. Okay, so that makes it more official. State Rep Geo says, hey, it's okay. Everything's under control. And let's say you send that out and you do a million of those to a million little towns all over the US at once. That's gonna affect the people voting, right? So there's a lot of these kind of negative things. There's also bigger ones. And the one that I'm the most back to iRobot is, I think artificial intelligence to a lot of extent is manipulating humans' behavior, right? Listen, when I go drive, I no longer know how to get anywhere anymore. I bring up my Google Maps or your Apple Maps. It is literally telling me where to go. And sometimes it's telling me to go one way because there's less traffic. Sometimes it's telling me to go another way because it thinks that it's more ecologically or environmentally sound that I go one way versus another way. And when you look at news and you can see that some news you're being shown, but the reality is a lot of news you're not being shown if you're on your cell phone and that kind of stuff. Those decisions are being done automatically with autonomous algorithms, and the ability to manipulate what you consume when it comes to news is a very scary proposition for the United States and for the whole world, especially if it then can be manipulated in some way by a bad actor.
Right. And you know, there's the term algorithmic scientists, and you have a lot of those in China, and they can actually know how to get to you, your likes, habits, all your data points. How important do you see this playing out for the election? And really with it being, you know, I think media has talked about maybe it could be the Russians or China, but this could also be manipulation right here on our soil, you know?
100%. I mean, you have candidates who are going to try and manipulate things in their favors, right? There's PACs, political action committees, associations, activists, advocacy groups who will, of course, try and manipulate
Chaos.
Yeah, it's just total chaos. I mean, and this isn't like theory. I mean, here's the thing about AI is people can already do that. Okay, AI just gives everyone the ability to do it 10 to 100 times faster and more prescient and cheaper at the same time, right? The ability to go and let's say you have a candidate and you want to say something bad about them. It's going to take a while for that whisper campaign to make it all around the town. With computers, with emails, with social media, with political advertisements, with AI using as catalyst, you can send it to a lot of people really quick. And so I do see that, but I also see the worry that you mentioned about foreign states meddling in our election as well. And it's not unlikely, it's probable that they will. And at a very minimum, they will do it as a test, right? They will do it to see how far they can go. They'll do A/B scenarios to see, okay, who's being changed by this, who's being manipulated by that. But maybe even scarier than all of that, it may not be a human, right? That is deciding that. It could be being done just as an automatic byprocess of these algorithms.
I see that you're well endowed with the sci-fi. So we can spend all day there.
But let me switch it's more true than it's not.
Yeah, let me throw this one as a curveball, where I'm sure you're used to getting questions as it relates on the government level, business. But let's take a look at pop culture. And pop culture is the low-hanging fruit that's always easy to manipulate. Most recently in the news, we have Kendrick Lamar and Drake. Drake in their rap beef. I'm sure you may be in tune, maybe not, but one of the things that we saw happen on this front that has never happened before is Drake employed AI to bring back the dead Tupac and then also Snoop Dogg. And just seeing how that was used, what do they say in crime, copycat crimes, right? Mm-hmm. And here we have something. Now that he's unleashed this, it's like Pandora's box got opened where he used somebody that was dead that had nothing to do with what's currently happening, create lyrics, tie that in with another person, sky's the limit, right? What is your take to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I have my government hat on.
Yeah.
Is I think we still have to maintain certain premises that we've always had, which is people have certain property. You can't borrow, steal, or use their property without their permission. You get into a contract with them, you license it, you give them royalties, or they let you go and you do that. And if I want to take my voice and my image, and if anyone thought there was any value to that at all, and I was able to market it, that's fine. But if I were to go and take yours, for instance, and train my AI devices to make me create an image like you, I think you should have a legitimate claim, even if it's similar but not that similar. But if I'm basing that off of you, I think you have a legitimate claim to say that I'm stealing some of your value.
What do you think if you're public figures? So in the world of politics, if you're a public figure, in the world of entertainment, you being a public figure, could that be the line? And just to throw this at you, because I'm vibing with you, you have athletes. You are a professional athlete. So whatever happens on social media, the NFL is almost saying that you have to be conditioned to accept and deal with. You drop the pass and you got 5 million followers. Well, of course, they're going to be pissed off. And
right.
You're getting that message on your phone, which may be a part of mental wellness that leads to trauma, right? But I'm kind of curious, like, if you're a public figure, could that be a fine line as to you signed up for this? Now technology has taken over. I'm just curious your thoughts.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's right. I think if you're a public figure, you just have to assume that some people will say anything about you or make you look like you're doing anything. But there is still a difference between people saying, like, let's say they took a picture of me, made fun of me or whatever, put me in a meme doing something stupid or something like that. I did sign up for it. Okay, that's fair. But I think if you start to make money off of that, then we have a different conversation. If you want to get mad at a sports figure for dropping the ball, fine. Everybody's an armchair quarterback and they'll say how they could have done it better than that professional. But if you are making money by using their likeness and their image, then I think, I think you're still doing something wrong. I mean, the First Amendment basically is about free speech, not necessarily, and not taking care of commercial speech, I think.
So when you have people like Beethoven and all those who were before copyright laws, now you're using AI to manipulate them, that seems to be okay, and that's legal, right?
Yes,
yeah. So and that's said it's legal because that was before these laws were in place.
That's right.
So now we have AI, and there's a lot that's not in place. So I got to throw it right back at you because I see that you're into the sci-fi. But what do we do about that?
What's interesting is I will talk maybe, and we have to work, but people may say, hey. I have an AI model that's been trained on listening to music that other people have generated. I'm listening to Taylor Swift and Led Zeppelin and Drake and whatever. I'm using all of that information. I'm training a model to come up with new music and new voice that is completely different than any of those people that I took their information for training. And so some people would say, well, that's not fair because you used Taylor Swift's information, Led Zeppelin's and Drake's and all that stuff, and you should have paid them and you didn't. And yeah, this voice is different or this music is different, but you still started with this. And the rebuttal to that is, well, that's what everyone does. Every single person who's ever started their own band listened to a bunch of other actors and a lot of other musicians and a lot of other songs, and they've, through this process in our brains, have developed their own style. And we think that's fine too. The other thing to point out, which I should, is that copyright law only applies to human generated music and so on. So right now we don't have any laws that would allow you to copyright AI music and that sort of thing.
Good point. Well, I just have two more questions.
Yep.
Because I think I'm very thankful for your time. I'm kind of curious, what's your take, students using ChatGPT in the classroom? Do you agree with that?
Listen, if someone said to you, okay, however old you are, you go back in time and say, listen, I want you to write an essay on the grapes of wrath. You know what that means. You have to read the book. Okay. You have to sit down and you have to talk about what you read. Okay. And if you asked your mom, who also read the book, to help you, that's cheating. If you went and you bought the Cliff Notes for it and you copied some pieces off of that, that's cheating. And so to me, just because it's a computer that's really smart, I still think that it's cheating, right? I mean, the problem. The homework assignment was do this yourself. It was do this yourself. And then unless the homework assignment is, hey, go into ChatGPT and do this. And the other way to look at it is, if you told the person you were given this that you use ChatGPT, would they be upset or not, right? And so I think the expectation for me is that if you're given a homework assignment in school and you use ChatGPT, and if the teacher said that would be considered cheating, you absolutely are cheating. Yes. Sorry to break the news to all the high schoolers out there, but they're still right and wrong before computers.
Isn't it interesting, though, that education has changed from memorization to now access? And that's really the point that I was looking at with you to see what you were going to say, that we're now in a day and age where it's really just about access. So if you have access, then you can just, what is the Constitution? I can just go to ChatGPT and tell me what I need to know and then regurgitate it from there.
Right, but the worry is it's like calculators in a way, right? They're very, very slow calculator, which is you really should learn how to add, right? You really should learn how to multiply. You should know how to do all of that. And then yes, if you need to do a whole bunch of calculations at once, sure, of course use a calculator. That's nothing wrong with that. But the real problem, as we all know with ChatGPT or anything else, is we're all going to find it very difficult to tell the truth from fiction, what's right, what's wrong. And I mean, I was just using it the other day to help me with something, and it said, hey, there's this article and this is what it says. The article does not exist. I was trying to find it. It just doesn't exist.
Right.
And so whatever, I still think you need to know the basic premises of addition, of research, of knowing the difference between a primary source and a secondary source and something that's just completely fiction.
So true. I agree with you. And it's interesting. We're in a day and age where it's now synthetic media, synthetic friends, synthetic people. And that's the reality that we're faced with. But that being said, Texas State Representative Giovanni, I want to thank you so much for your time. And I said your name without messing up.
You did it awesome.
You've provided a wealth of knowledge. I want to follow up with you again. Thank you so much. This is Mike Johns. Check this out. Bringing it to you live each and every week. Yee!
You just finished listening to another episode of Yo, Check This Out, connecting the streets from LA to the world. Follow Yo, Check This Out on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn for the hottest news in tech. Be sure to hit that like button.